Okay, everybody, we're going to get started this afternoon. Welcome back from lunch. Hope you had a chance to enjoy yourself in the beautiful weather out here. My name is Chris Kocher. I'm going to be leading the panel discussion this afternoon. I've got some great panelists, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the critical strategies around monetization and how you can future-proof some of the things that you're doing in your business. I'm going to introduce them all in just a minute, but before I do that, I want to just tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. So we're going to focus on doing sort of a look out into what I call the Goldilocks period, sort of about 12 to 24 months from now, where we're going to be looking at kind of where it's not too far into the future where you can't guess what's going to happen, but it's not too close where you can't affect budgets and product strategies. So let's think about that window out there at about 12 to 24 months. First thing we're going to do is talk about kind of what does that environment look like in terms of SaaS, cloud, monetization, business models, a lot of changes. You know, Ray talked a lot about those this morning. So what does that look like? And then we're going to, second set of questions I'm going to go through with the panelists, ask them to kind of back up and say, okay, so that's where things may be. Here's where we are today. What do you start doing today with your companies? What are the issues that you're going to face? How do you start creating that change so you'll be ready in another year or so? So that's what we're going to do as we focus ahead here. And what I'd like to do at the end here also is hopefully we'll have some time at the end for a bunch of questions. We'll open this up. So if any of you have questions that you'd like to ask, just keep them in mind, and hopefully we'll have a chance to get to some of those. And if not during the session, I'm sure some of us will be around afterwards. I know Ray has got to run to a flight here, so we appreciate him staying a little bit longer. So let me start with some introductions. First of all, I'll tell you about myself. I'm the founder and managing director of a venture consulting firm called Gray Heron. We work with a lot of executives, CEOs, and investors on helping business strategy and product strategies. We worked with a lot of big companies, Apple, Cisco, HP, and so forth, as well as many, many small startup, early stage venture-funded companies. And what we primarily focus on is, business models, growing companies. How do you increase revenues? How do you increase the shareholder valuations? And so a lot of this really focuses on monetization. And in fact, for any of those of you who might be interested, I'm actually going to be doing a presentation in another few weeks at the Cloud Internet Expo session on monetizing IoT. Show me the money. And it's a big issue that's becoming more and more pronounced these days. So let me start from left to right here. I probably don't need to say much about Ray. Hopefully most of you guys saw him this morning, but as I think you all know, he is the author of the book Disrupting Digital Business. He's been quoted by a number of different publications, so everything from Harvard Business Review to CNBC, Bloomberg, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, and so forth. And I'm really looking forward to his unbounded perspective and energy as he talks about innovation and disruption. So we'll get into some of that in a little bit. So next up we have Raj, and he's currently the VP of Marketing and Growth Services at Avantgate. So he's helped a lot of customers grow their software-driven recurring revenue models. So those of you that are looking at that, Raj has been doing a lot of that for a while. He was at Oracle, PeopleSoft, Capgemini, and Infosys, doing a lot of that with customers. So I think he'll be able to bring some of those real-world strategies to the conversation here. Next, we have Letitia. And Letitia is the Vice President of the M2M, or the Machine-to-Machine Solutions and Services Group at Gemalto. She's responsible for driving a lot of the strategy around all of those platforms. And in her 18 years in the business and industry, she's worked in a variety of different things, everything from product design to engineering, quality assurance. And I think she's going to bring a lot of the international flavors, so we won't be just thinking about domestic issues, but the international flavors, as well as a lot of the machine-to-machine and IoT kinds of issues that arise. I know she's got a lot of security and trust that are very near and dear to her heart, so we'll probably hear some more of that. Next up, we're honored to have Court Stinnett, and Court comes from a company called ZMax, and it's great because he's heading up business development there. What they do is they're an optical design software company, or they do advanced optical software. Prior to that, he was at Microsoft for many years, and as I understand it, actually appeared on stage with Bill Gates a couple times. So we have some real personas here. But one of the great things is Court and his company have started to think through their strategy, what they're going to start doing around monetization, how they need to change the business. So he'll be a great one to share some of his insights there. And I encourage you, again, to think of any questions you may want to have for Court. And then finally, we have Jake Fox, who you saw speak this morning. As you said, he's sort of the mastermind of a lot of the strategy of what's going on. And apparently a very candid person, so I think we'll get some great insights from him also. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that. So let me just kick off with the first question. Again, this is the sort of the Goldilocks thing, 12 to 24 months out. Kind of what do we see happening around cloud, SaaS, monetization, business models? And Ray, why don't we start with you? See if you have some thoughts on that. You want to share 1 or 2 points?
Yeah, especially on IoT, a lot of things that are happening right now is we're in feature wars. Like I enabled it to work on my phone. I enabled this to happen. And we're starting to see different models actually occur that are going to be more around service, really about additional sales and additional sets of cross-sell and cross-marketing that's going to happen. And I think those are starting to happen as people start to think about how that information is going to be used. So it's like, hey, congratulations, we know that you've used your thermostat like 10 times for this kind of feature. Would you like to buy something else? And so over time, we're going to start seeing those kind of offers pop up. But right now, it's just like servicing it. It says something's going to happen. Or, by the way, we want to sell an additional feature. And that's kind of where the future is. But right now, people are just getting excited about a feature being enabled. We're going to get past that.
Okay.
I don't know if my...
Okay. Yeah, you sound great.
All right. So from our perspective, I think we're still early stages, right? Customers that we are talking to are struggling with getting some basics in place. The vision is there, clearly. They all want to get there. So we look at it as 3 concentric circles, right? There's a circle of, here's all the companies that are embarking on some sort of a digital transformation strategy, right? It's being talked to the board level, it's talked to the C-level. There's another circle of companies that are saying, okay, let's try this out and actually have freemiums and trials and interesting new forms of monetization being put in place, right? So they're struggling with, channel conflict and how does it work with other sales organizations and how do I compensate and so on and so forth. And there's another circle of companies that are really actually transacting online, which basically means that there's struggling with things like recurring revenue models and so on and so forth, right? So how do we package, how do we monetize, how do we recognize revenue, so on and so forth. That's what we see happening.
Great. So to keep this interesting, I'm going to skip over Letitia. Let's go right to Jake. We'll just bounce around here a bit.
So I mean, most of these questions are answered with it depends. So it really depends on where you're at. If you're already in process, you're already doing something in the market, my advice is to make sure that you have the building blocks behind the scenes to really execute operationally, if you don't already. If you're planning and preparing from a product strategy standpoint, what products am I going to bring to market? I have this IoT play that I'm going to embark in the next 12, 24, 36 months. Get your house in order, because it's real simple, obvious advice, but the excitement around the product strategy is going to fall flat on its face if you don't have the back end. Mm-hmm. So it really could mean driving execution of your entitlement system, your back office, all your back office systems, integrations, et cetera, in preparation, in anticipation for those things that you know will come, even if you don't yet have your product strategy in line.
Yeah. Letitia, why don't we jump to you? And I'm sure you've got some views of kind of what the state of things may be in a year or two as you think through some of your strategies.
Well, what I see on the markets or the market that are using IoT technologies or industrial IoT technologies, what we see that we are in a shift. Those companies and those industries are really in the shift, like automotive market, energy market, health market, from a complete closed environment. So the car has been made to be driven on the road, and now they are connecting those cars. And car makers are struggling in how to monetize the services I'm bringing on board to the end user, so the driver, but also connecting the car to other type of infrastructure. And the big question with the Internet of Things is you've got industry that are interconnecting themselves, and where is the money for who, and how to share this value, and how to bring the key enablers to trust all the elements that are coming from those objects, whatever the objects are, a car, a shoe, a baseball bat, or a smart metering gateway. And the key thing these days to have the promise of IoT in 12 months or 24 months is what companies need to implement today to enable the new business models. And dealing with massive number of data without protecting them, without guaranteeing the privacy of the data with regard to the end user, might be a problem.
Okay, that's great. So Cord, I know you've thought a little bit more about the future. I mean, how do you envision things to be in a year or two?
Well, I guess there's really two things that come top of our mind as we kind of think through, how we're going to roll out, what it means to our business, and really it's about, what are our customer needs. I mean, we talk to our customers every day. I mean, we've talked a lot about big data here, but there's lots of data sources here that we mine from talking to the customer, survey, CRM. And it's really about understanding the needs, how we can help their business. Now, that said, I mean, we talk to the customers, it's the individual that uses their software, but we're a B2B company, we sell strictly to businesses. And so it's not good enough to talk to just customers, you also have to step back and understand what the purchasing department requirements are, IT requirements, and so that adds a little bit of flavor to the discussion. The other thing we look at is really top of mind for us is data and security. I mean, it's really protecting our intellectual property, customer, information. If something bad happens out there, it really falls back to us as opposed to our partners. So those are kind of the two things that kind of drive a lot of the decisions that we've made as we've gone down this path. We haven't completely implemented, but we are well down the path.
Okay, great. So let's shift our attention here now to sort of what are some of the things that we can start doing today, or that the audience should start thinking about doing. And Ray, maybe I'll start with you. Are there 2 or 3 key things that you think people should really be focused on or be considering as they move forward here?
Yeah, I think one of the first things people should start doing is look at the unit cost pricing models that we're talking about. Right? What is that smallest unit of something you can sell? Because if you can imagine that, you can start thinking about what you can bundle, what you can reproduce, what you can kind of like resell. I'd start there. And then the second thing I'd start trying to understand is really your channels and your channel effectiveness. And when I mean channels, I mean your sell-through channels, because you're going to have to make a decision when you're direct to consumer. And if you're using a reseller or someone else, exactly what value are they bringing you, and can you quantify that value? Those are probably 2 spots that you can really quickly figure out if there's a problem or not. So,
yeah.
Or an opportunity.
I think that's a great point, yeah, because channels of distribution can't be changed overnight. You really got to start anticipating that. Great. Raj, how about you?
So what I would say is look at your business, all the products that you have in a portfolio, put that in a 2x2, right? One axis is complexity of product, which is simple products, complex products. Another axis is complexity of the sale, of the buyer dynamic, right? Can be bought by one person, needs multiple people to actually have a committee, a decision to actually buy it. When you overlay your portfolio, your channel strategies, to borrow Ray's point, right, becomes absolutely critical. One, why are your simple products being sold through complex channels?
Yep.
So there's a mismatch of value there, right? That's easy. Another one is, well, there's simple products, but they actually need a lot more guidance because of the buyer dynamic. So you've got to figure out ways of reducing cost of sales by bringing things in-house and not just moving to direct sales channels. Third, you have obviously the last quadrant, which is the most complex and requires a lot of dynamic. Then by all means, double down into figuring out what your direct sales strategy is and also your channel is. But the view is put it across in a portfolio, and then you can start to make some decisions around that very quickly. Right.
So the implications are, in some cases, you may want to double down on your channel. In other cases, it may be some of these products, depending on the attributes of the clients and the products themselves, you go direct.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly
which
right.
can create a lot of turmoil.
Yep.
So, good point. Letitia, how about you? Any particular points you'd bring out?
Yeah, I mean, we were speaking some minutes ago about how the IoT is going to move into 2 years. But it's now that as a company you need to assess what are the security needs into the full application to the market you want to provide, in order to have those new business models, those new source of revenues. And that means that you need to trust the device, which is somewhere. You need to trust the different networks, so the different connectivity that you are putting in place. You need to trust the data, because that's where the value is, and that you can monetize the data to other players. And then to trust the ecosystem. As I was saying, IoT is about the interconnection of different industries, and you are owning the data that you are generating with your own devices. And to monetize those data, you need to be sure that those data are not corrupted, that they are trustworthy, that they are, the integrity of those data are correct, and then you can sell those data to others, to other industries that can make, generate new revenue stream on top of it. You've got one device, several service providers that can make benefit out of it.
Yeah.
Only if those data, the device, and the ecosystem is trusted.
A great point. I think another thing that triggers in my mind here is the whole ecosystem issue, because as you're pointing out, in most cases, and I think this is especially true with IoT, there are so many players in the ecosystem that it's very hard for any one company to provide a complete solution. So if you're going to have a whole solution that a customer can really buy into, it means having a great partner network through the ecosystem. So great. So Cord, I know you and your company have been thinking about some of these issues. So what are some of the things that you've gone through and your teams have gone through in terms of thinking about, okay, what do we start doing now to prepare for this future?
Okay. But, yeah, a couple things come to mind here. One is, and we've been talking about the data, I said know the customer, but really it's about, we started off about 4 years ago. I don't want to frighten anybody. It does take a while to really kind of start building these systems and get them in place. But we started off about 4 years ago, and I remember we had a meeting where we whiteboarded out all the data we thought we needed from our customer, and what we need, and there was about 50 things on the board, and it's like, wait a minute, we can't do 50 things, so we had to prioritize what is the most important for us, what's our top 5, and start integrating systems together to help us start to understand bit by bit, what the customer is telling us and what the data, the insights really are bringing us. And as we move forward, if you looked at what we do now, we probably have 50 KPIs now, but they're a lot different than what we originally started out with, because as you go through, you learn more and you start redefining what's important to you. So I would start looking at your data, how you pull systems together. We pulled our CRM, tied it together with our software. We've instrumented the software so we get data out of the software so we know what features, how often our customers are using them. We've tied that into our marketing side, so when we send out email, we can see who's opening, what they're interested in. So we get a lot of data, but it's a matter of prioritizing and just taking it one step at a time. And the other thing is because I think you can all be swimming in a lot of the information out there, is start simple. I mean, you do not want to try to implement this grand system. You start with a simple system, and then once we get it implemented, then we can kind of build on it. And it's easy to say, but when you're in the organization, everybody has sort of an issue, a thing they want, and so a system can get sort of unwieldy. But when the technical teams try to implement it, that gets very difficult to do. So I'd say keep it simple, start with the basics and then kind of move forward. And it does take a while to kind of work yourself through there. But you get to the end, and you understand the customer, you've got systems in place, you've dropped some of those fixed costs, your administrative costs. So you're in a very good position and you have a lot of flexibility in order to meet those customer needs.
That's great. So wow, 50 KPIs, that sounds like a lot to deal with. So let me ask a follow-up question, because you've obviously been through this for like 4 years now. And I think about organizational change and transformation, it can be really, really tough. It's a little bit like, I don't know if any of you heard of Paul Saffo, who used to be with the Institute for the Future. Now he's gone on to do some other things. But one of my favorite quotes of his was, "Never mistake a clear view for a short distance." And when I think about organizational change, I think that's it. Like you and your team may have had a very clear idea of kind of, here's where we want to go, here's what we want to do. Trying to get the organization behind it is pretty tough. What things did you find helped you trying to bring the organization along?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is we're a fairly small company. We're about 50 people, most of us up in Seattle. And so that it makes it easy. We're not all vastly distributed. But we have, basically bringing in all of the key players into the room and talk it through. You get buy-in early. And really, when you really start boiling it down, it's building early success that gets buy-in. Because if everybody's uncertain at first and there's some concern, but once you have a success, you get a key, you drive some growth, things start happening. People buy in pretty quick and they get on board in a hurry. But it does take a lot of work up front in order to make sure everybody's comfortable and they feel good about the solution of the direction you're headed. And once you start building up momentum, then it starts to become much easier to roll. Everybody, gives the team the guidance, the benefit of the doubt, and also we haven't been afraid to experiment as you start bringing your systems together, and we treat them as experiments where we say, let's just give it a try because we just don't know what the real answer is, and we may try it and okay, we're done. That didn't work so well, or you may try it and say, that worked, and so let's do some more of it. And as long as you treat it kind of in that respect, people don't get all defensive about trying to protect, ideas and ideologies within the organization, because we all feel like, okay, we all said we'd give it a try, didn't work, let's move on to the next thing, because there's no end to the list of things you want to or you can try.
Yeah. So small steps, get some early wins, keep changing. Okay, good. So Jake, how about you? I'm sure you have some technology views of things, and sort of what should people be thinking about? I mean, it's a big list of things to work on and think about.
I think that until you really dig into this concept of an ecosystem, I think it's underappreciated, the complexity and the thought that needs to go into it. Not only from a technology standpoint, where you're enabling an ecosystem to develop with partners, et cetera, through your interfaces, integrations, but also in your business relationships, your models, how revenue is shared. Letitia spoke on that, but I think it's a pretty important puzzle to start thinking about early and continuing to revisit. The other aspect for me would be, to a point Ray mentioned earlier, is but maybe from a product management point of view, is look at the use cases. Like, there are natural use cases already today that, kind of an informal ecosystem that most of us already have in place. So I'd start there. I mean, why reinvent the wheel? Try to reduce friction, try to make it easier, faster, cheaper, a better user experience, whatever the case may be, in those already existing use cases. Yeah. That's a good place to look for an early win.
Great. Okay, good. So I'm going to ask one last question, then I want to throw it open to the rest of you, see if there's any questions that you have that you want to ask anybody here on the panel. But the question I have, and I'll open this up to any of you that might want to answer this, is, there's been a fair amount of talk about the value is in the data. It's the data, the exhaust. And one of the things that was kind of interesting, actually, I don't know if any of you saw this, but Gartner has predicted by 2020, so in about another 5 years, there'll be 1 million new devices getting on the internet every hour. And boy, when I saw that, I just thought, boy, that is a lot of exhaust. So there's a massive amount of data coming. The question though is, some people have said, okay, yeah, just give everything away, and just the value of the data is so great you can sell the data or monetize that. Do you have any examples of people who've done that? Or any views on that?
Have you seen that TV show about mining for gold up in Alaska?
I don't think I have.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
I think Warren maybe. Warren and I watch the same TV, I think. So actually, I was on a flight back from the East Coast last week, and I was on a flight that had DirecTV, and so I was working, and I keep seeing this show. I'm not listening to the audio, but you see a bunch of guys with beards, because beards are trendy now, and of varying ages, and they're sitting out in the middle of a big hole somewhere in Alaska trying to get gold. And it's just a pile and pile and pile of rocks and dirt. Oh, hey. And then you see this little jar with these little tiny bits of stuff, and that's the effort of a whole season of mining. And that's I'm painting a really ugly picture, but but that is our challenge. That is our opportunity to sift through all of that stuff and really understand the value, where the value is and where it isn't, so that you can leverage it. So 1 million devices coming on every hour, yes, but where's that 1 or 2 or 3 pieces of value that you tap into and then leverage? And the connections you make between those.
And the lifetime of each of those devices. Perhaps 1 million an hour is going to be connected, but 900 millions, thousands going to die 2 hours after.
Yeah.
Okay. So any other comments from anybody?
I do have one comment about the data, because we're data people. In our company, it's mostly engineers and physicists, and everybody loves data. But one of the things that you do have to really be cautious for is data biases dropping into it, because in most cases you don't know it's happening, and it can be a real insidious problem. So you really have to be on the guard on, it's regardless of whether it's pulled off the internet or through a survey or even talking to the customers. Bias enters most of those conversations and data streams. You just have to be, cautious and make sure you understand the integrity of the data and really what it's built upon to make good decisions.
Yeah, it's good advice.
I think related to what was said, start thinking about the context that you want to track. And some of that context might be some of the attributes that will help you sift through the data to make more sense. Think of them as kind of like tags or beacons that get to you other sources of information. So fire alarm warning. Hopefully no one has epilepsy. Location is a great one. You want to do a time series. That's definitely one that you want to keep. You definitely want to think about roles and relationships, whether it's you and a product or you and a family or you and a group. But there's other things, right, that matter depending on what business you're in. Temperature plays a role, or heart rate if you're looking at a wearable where someone's doing something. Thinking about geospatial, depending if you're in a stadium or a shopping center, you might want to track those things. So I think you'll start finding attributes that are important for you, but that's something to start with.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to anybody who would like to ask a question. I think we have a microphone we can pass around here. Questions for the panel here? We've got these experts that can answer a lot of your questions as you start to think about your journeys going forward. I think we got one way in the back here. Oh, you have one? Okay, let's. How about a round of applause here for Ray? That's a takeoff. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ray. Good travels.
Firstly, I want to congratulate you for a good conference. I'm KRS Murthy, expert in big data. My question is, what kind of algorithms, some of you may be technical or not, I don't know, whether you're going to use any R or any machine learning languages to identify the relationships that is not evident directly. As Ray Wang was mentioning, you want to look at one parameter and see the connection to other parameters. And our presumptions may not be the actual thing. It may be we are going to discover something. So anyone who can talk about, the technical gentleman there could also cover some of that.
I'll clarify the question. I'm not sure I heard it correctly, but was it what kind of
algorithms and softwares that you are seeing, as the panelists, including you, if you need to talk about it. Example is machine learning languages like R and so on. And there are others, Monte Carlo, etc., to be used to analyze what you see in what domain that at least the panelists are using, because that is the crux of knowing the relationships, understanding what it is, discovering relationships.
Jake, do you want to take that one?
I don't know if I want to take that one.
That's a hard one. That's very hard.
Yeah, it's hard to give a general. You have to know your use case. You have to know the environment you're dealing with. You have to know your customer's deployment. And then you have to identify what data is available to you. And then you need to analyze what is meaningful. And I'm asking not a general answer, but you were always maybe from ZMAX point of view.
Well, I'll give it a shot. That is a very hard question, but we do a couple of different things. is Monte Carlo analysis. We do a lot of Monte Carlo analysis with the data, trying to get sort of a better understanding of the range of outcomes, because it usually is not deterministic. It's usually sort of a range you're looking at. And one of the things that we always say internally is causality and correlation are different things. So just because you see a correlation of the data does not mean there's causality there. So what we try to do is on the backside really is part of that experimentation thing is kind of test the hypothesis in the market to the extent you can. And some of these things are difficult to do, but it doesn't mean you don't try to do it, you don't try to learn from it, you don't make some sort of decisions from it and move yourself forward. But that's probably one of the hardest pieces right there, is really establishing causality.
I would think some of the machine learning and AI kinds of things will come into play, but Jake, have you seen or thought about those kinds of aspects of other ways of analyzing data?
I mean, from a machine learning or AI standpoint, those are things we haven't looked at from our product strategy, no.
Okay.
I mean, I hope that that's in our future.
Yeah.
But
I think one of the challenges is that it's easy to go off on it's almost like a wild goose chase. I mean, you can start doing all kinds of analysis and you might see some interesting correlations. And sometimes that may be a very worthwhile thing to iterate through. But I think if you really kind of take a step back and think about who's the customer that you have, that you're going to have in the future, what's the value you're providing them? And there's a lot of different information that may be flowing through channels of distribution, different pieces of technology, and trying to understand those in the context of what the customer need is probably the most important thing.
You're using the data-based information analytics and decision making, right? So how do you get from data to what is the methodology you use to identify the relationship to what decision you make? Everything is to be logical, machine driven. Human beings have limitations to it.
Yeah. I think, I tell you, let's get a microphone. Oh, thank you very much. I think as Jake was saying, a lot of cases, it just depends kind of what you're trying to do. I think
It depends.
It depends. But let's see. I think we have one other comment here, and then let's move on to another question. Go ahead.
So part of my master's program, we study all of this stuff. And I go to North. I get that. So part of the thing that I'm trying to understand from what you're trying to ask is, are you asking the panel what particular analytical software tool is being, okay. So that's really hard to identify because there's so much out there and it's going to be dependent upon companies, is what I'm.
It's a general answer. I'm asking the domain that you are involved in, how you do, so that we understand how it's done. Giving a general answer.
Well, I think Court was saying, he explained a little bit about how they looked at it, and it's not a clean, one size fits all kind of thing. Let me suggest this. Let's take that. I tell you what, let's take that offline. I'd be happy to talk about this with the rest of the panel. I want to leave it open to other people who have other questions at this time. So, other questions? I think we have one in the back over here. Actually, I can get that. Okay, great, thanks.
So obviously a big part of monetization is cost. And a big part of cost for IoT is connectivity. And we kind of brushed over it. I was wondering if you could talk about that, because at the end of the day, if you're a multinational corporation and you have sensors deployed in every one of the continents, Leticia, you and I have spoken about this, having local connectivity for IoT on a different kind of data plan than the ones that are currently out there, rather than waiting for 5G to show up in 2020, really goes back to Jake's observation about it depends, right? So I was wondering if you could talk about the foundational pillars that actually go into the cost components of IoT, as opposed to, there's a lot of sensors out there and they're sending a lot of data.
Leticia, you want to take this?
Well, with regards to the connectivity of the devices, what we see in the traditional way of doing since 20 years in more industrial use cases, such as car manufacturing, call it Industry 4.0 if you want. It's big bandwidth with GSM technology, GSM type of technology, or fixed line such as PLC, and waiting for the 5G that might be deployed in 5 years' time, perhaps. You've got a massive number of alternatives to connect objects. Short range, mid range, long range, such as the ultra narrowband type of technology. You have heard about Sigfox, about LoRa technology that has been deployed or developed by IBM. Sigfox is a French startup. You've got weightless organization as well. So it's ultra narrowband technology. So super thin bandwidth, but really cost effective, low power, and that really fits for certain use cases. And I'm absolutely sure that, again, it depends of your use case.
Yeah.
You need high bandwidth. You will have to go through traditional, let's say, GSM-based type of connectivity, and then the data plan will occur upon the number of megabytes you are transferring and using. And what we see all around the world is that the RPU of carriers that are dealing with M2M and IoT is dropping down like hell. Like today, for $1 or $2 a month, you've got proper connectivity with a mobile object, let's say, that requires high bandwidth. While ultra-narrowband technologies, it's low cost, low power, and it's $1 a year connectivity. But you've got only 100 bytes that are exchanged on the line. So you've got IoT use cases that does not need high bandwidth, but that needs to live 10 years without an interaction of anybody. So long time life battery and just sending some byte here and there. This type of ultra-narrowband technology fits those use cases. And then, of course, you've got all, if you take the home automation, you've got all short-range technology from Bluetooth LE through the ZigBee, while the connectivity is for free. Then, what we see in Europe with the Authority of Regulation of Spectrums is the European, so the BEREC, is currently looking at licensing those spectrums in order to have a kind of police in this wide west of connectivity in IoT. So no doubt that waiting for 5G, we're going to have alternatives to GSM with adapted tariff plan and data plan for specific use cases. The use cases that just required notification and alarms, and the data plan that are a bit bigger when you have, for a connected car, for example, to exchange a gigabyte of data while driving.
Yeah, it's going to be different across different industries, different use cases. Completely.
It will be really linked to industries and use cases, linked with quality of services of the network as well.
Good. Okay.
Hey, Chris,
any last questions?
I was just saying, I had a thought on that last one. I like that answer. But I tell you what we do is we do a lot of sampling of data. I mean, I don't need 1 billion data points. I need a good sampling plan, and I can get really the same information out of it.
Yeah.
So you can handle, and we do a lot of that sort of to drive cost out of sort of the analysis, make it quicker. Because almost, you get 1,000 data points well sampled. It'll give you a good understanding of what's out there.
Yeah, you get pretty close to perfect information. Okay, great. So any last questions here?
I have one.
Okay, we have one in the back corner. Let's take this as the last question, and then I have.
So I think the panel here is like very, it's a great panel simply because each one of you represents a very essential building block to an IoT strategy. So you have billing, you have connectivity, you have monetization. My question to probably a little bit to each of you, when do you get involved in a typical IoT project? Is they already have the business case in place and then they start with connectivity, or do they want to get the business case in place first, so they start with billing or monetization? If you talk about that, that'll give a really good perspective to where to start.
Okay, so I think that the question is, in terms of the sort of life of a new IoT initiative or project that you're going to have, when's a good time to get technology involved here? After some of it's been defined, or in process, or kind of what stage? So let's go right down the panel here. Raj, if you want to kick off, or do you have any?
Sure. Well, for us, I think what we've noticed is you need a business case for monetization for IoT, right? And typically it takes multiple phases. The initial investment is all about deploying the sensors, is collecting the data, and so on and so forth, right? Those are the elements that we don't get involved with. But when it comes to the actual monetization, how do you want to process this information? How do you want to parcel that? How do you want to bundle it? What's your go-to-market strategy? What's your channel selection? That's when we sort of get involved in this whole process. So I would say mid to late stage. I don't think we'll be very early stage because there's a gestation period before it gets to critical mass.
Great. I'm going to guess that Letitia would probably say a little earlier because some of your things have very long lead times. But how would you respond to that?
What I've seen the current customer we have, it always starts with a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Then this brilliant idea, to whom I'm going to sell it, and what will be the benefits of this end-to-end solution. Then to deploy it, it starts with a device, always. It always starts with something which is tangible, whatever it's fashion, not fashion, sexy, not sexy. But it starts with the hardware piece and the device. And then they are thinking about all what needs to be put in place in order to do it. And what we have seen is you've got two main type of companies, the do-it-yourself guys that are building the device, buying the connectivity from whoever, and then building their vertical application that answer the benefit they had for their original idea and their business case. And you've got the other type, and it can take a while. When you have a brilliant idea and a business case there, you might not have on the market 24 months to wait in order that the full story is up and running. And you've got the other category of customers that always start with a brilliant idea, start with a device, and they are building their device, but looking for partners in the ecosystem that can help them to remove all the complexity that is in between, I've got a brilliant idea, and I've got an end-to-end application in place. And this second category, they are working with an ecosystem that can help them to do the plumbery from the device to get the data and really analyze the data. For example, insurance companies that are putting in place pay-as-you drive, how you drive type of business case, they are not doing everything on their own. They want to be fast on market, and they don't want to put $1 million on the table just for a try. So they are working with companies that are bringing enablers to help them to go faster and to have a pay-as-you-go type of model.
Yeah. Okay. Court, any thoughts from you?
I think I forgot the question, to be honest with you.
This is about the implementation. Any good time to get involved, start pulling in some technology, and it sounds like it's been something you've been gestating for a few years.
Yeah,
so.
and I would say it's kind of that middle space. You don't bring them in too early and not too late. What we did, we had an idea, and we had sort of kind of the upper level management support. We did some modeling. We had customer data. So we kind of understood some things, but we got to it's like, okay, I think there's an opportunity here, but you get to the point where there's things you do not know, and that's when you start bringing in the technology experts to tell us, what is and what isn't possible, and that's why we reached out to a lot of the partners, and we would start discussing. Here's kind of what we're thinking. What can we do to kind of solve some of these problems? Because it's a lot of times all of those answers aren't within the organization. Well, probably they're never all within the organization. Yeah. So you kind of have to reach out. But we did have it's sort of that genesis of the idea, and we had some basic modeling. And we'd gone down the path and had support of the upper management, and then we brought in the technology.
Yeah. Okay. Jake, do you have any quick thoughts on that, or?
Yeah. So it doesn't typically happen this way, but my recommendation for bringing us in from a software monetization standpoint would be when you've made the decision that you're going to bring a product to market. So you have a working proof of concept, maybe you're going to roll out a beta, integrate us at that stage. So you can use that learning process to also advance and refine your monetization solution implementation. Because you're going to learn things along the way, and if you have us in place, it's going to make it that much easier.
Yeah. I suspect the other benefit of bringing you in at that time is that obviously you've got experience, you've seen a lot of these different deployments before, so you can solve a lot of problems before they get into trouble. So a good way to sort of prevent early intervention sort of thing. So great, okay, so we're gonna wrap up here. What I wanna do is just ask each of you to answer in like just 1 or 2 sentences, that's all, very quickly here. So in another year or two now, with all these changes, what's the biggest surprise we're gonna see? So you got 1 or 2 sentences. Raj, you wanna kick off here? Or? You want
I think you should start from the other side.
Okay, who wants to volunteer here? Just a big surprise, something that people might not suspect will happen here in another year or so.
I mean, I think that there are some big players trying to make a stake at the end-to-end solution or the platform for IoT.
Yeah.
And I think everyone has their prediction, but I think that'll be a big surprise.
Yeah. Okay. Court, any thoughts from you?
I'm probably the worst guy to answer this question. But at least the way I look at it and think about it, and I'm kind of glad Ray's not here, is because I think you're going to see, because cash flow is really important when you start thinking these things through. And you get to these little teeny tiny slices, and cash flow gets to be sort of the issue. I think you see that sort of move back, and the pendulum will swing a little bit the other way. So it's people are thinking more kind of annual or a bigger hunk instead of that small slice. Because
so you're saying it's going to slow down adoption?
No, not slow down adoption, but just kind of the terms of which it adopts may change. Instead of being able to buy by the minute, in other words, maybe that's not quite so good.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll move back the other way. So, okay, here's a block for you, and it's a bigger block than a minute.
Yeah. It's an interesting point, because I actually have done a bunch of work at various technology adoption things over the last 10 or 20 years. And what you often see is that the technology actually is way ahead of the business case and the social aspects of it. So it's like, could you do it? Absolutely, we could deliver it today. And it may take 5 or 10 years for society, for privacy, for banks, for payment. All these issues tend to create a lot of inertia, slow you down. So, Letitia, any thoughts from you on the biggest surprises you think might pop up here in another year or so?
Well, it's going to be a surprise. I cannot disclose it.
You have a new product announcement you want to make today, or?
No, I agree with you. I mean, it's not perhaps a surprise, but the big question is, what happened to Chrysler this summer. I would say the question mark is which company is going to be the next. Not the next scandal, but the next company to suffer from a massive hack.
Yeah.
Because today in connected object, however you call it, Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things, the big surprise is most probably a massive and dangerous hack on a specific industry. And how this industry is going to react, because today security is not taken as by design, is an afterthought. Yep. And we are currently living all around us, wherever we're speaking about electricity, water, gas, cars. It's infrastructure that live for 20 years, 30 years, so old technology. So the big surprise will be who is going to act next time, and what will be the consequences. And consequences could come with regulation, with a complete transformation of the ecosystem, and to start back and start on proper foundations. And might accelerate or slow down a bit the adoption of connected devices.
Okay. Great. So
more
Raj.
a fear than a surprise.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I think the biggest surprise for us will be that we'll all see that you heard the phrase "meet the new boss, same as the old boss," right? So we'll see that simple concepts of making money, being profitable, staying in the black. These things will continue to rule, and my prediction is you'll have 60 to 80% of the unicorns, you'll find they're actually regular horses. Probably some of them are donkeys, but that's what's going to happen in 2 years. So.
Yeah, I think things could slow down there. Okay, good. Hey, well, listen, thank you very much. I appreciate this. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and let us know if you have any other questions. Thank you for the panel, too. It's great.